Howdy, folks. It's Doodly Squatch here, coming at you with another doodle. Let's jump on in. And here we go. So today's drawing, I was trying to figure out something to draw. That's the fun part. Starting out with just, who knows? I was trying to stick something into a shape. Oftentimes I'll start with just kind of that generic oval shape and then just kind of go on from there. Try and squish something in there, that sort of thing. But, sometimes I just don't like it and we end up doing something else. As of recording today is Labor Day. So, the immortal words of Homestar. Today is Labor Day. Labor Day, Labor Day, Labor Day. Anyhow. So yeah, got a day off. Happy days. Get to stay home and do nothing, which is great. I love not doing things. I love not having plans and being able to just kind of do nothing. But let's see. Got me thinking about vacations and childhood vacations, or just trips I've taken in my lifetime, and kind of the core memories from those, or the antics, that sort of stuff. Growing up, when I was living in California, we would visit my mom's parents in Las Vegas, and then usually from there we would zip over to Utah to visit the extended family, like my dad's parents and my mom's siblings, that sort of thing. And we'd see the house that I grew up in. Or not grew up, the house I was in when I was born. Didn't quite grow up there, sure, learned how to walk there. That's how I would put it. But it was, when you're little and you go on trips, and they're those kind of long road trips, it's interesting how your mind can kind of, gloss over things, and you don't have to worry too much. Like your parents find things to distract you, I guess, whether it be snacks or we had stories on tape that we would listen to, and I think what I remember most was we had this little VCR TV combo that we had plugged in, and it would sit between the driver and passenger seat, and so us four boys could watch movies while the car was going. And one particular trip I remember, it was the night before we're going to leave, and my parents said they had a surprise for us, and it was a VHS copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. And yeah, that had that had just come out, and it was so cool. I was so excited. Just that whole opening bit in the toy store when they're fighting the Foot Clan and Kino shows up and all that jazz, just way too cool. And I even remember like the previews before the movie on the tape. Even those stood out. There was a preview for Suburban Commando. I was frozen today. That one. And going to bed that night and then waking up in an already moving car. My parents could secret us out and sort of get us out in the car while we were still asleep, get us buckled, and we'd be off and going. And I'd usually wake up about the time where we had reached like Barstow. And in Barstow there's a McDonald's that is like part of a train station, or I don't even know. But the place where you eat was in these like dining cars of like what looks like a train. So that was, McDonald's breakfast, breakfast of champions. We'd stop there and we'd eat, and then we'd, all trundle back in the car and off we went. And the things I remember seeing the most were we would drive near the exit for like Calico Ghost Town, and then there was like Zizek's Road, and there was the abandoned water park that I don't think I ever saw open ever. So anyone that's made this trip, definitely remembers those sorts of things. And then we'd stop in Baker, California. That's where all the signs are for alien beef jerky. But then it's mostly just a lot of like fast food joints, and then a giant what's it called? Thermometer. There we go. Not a giant thermostat, a thermometer. And then we'd be able to tell how hot it was, and that was kind of in the hottest part of the state that we'd be passing through. But yeah, and just picture that trip every July for most of my childhood. Stopping in Vegas was always fun. My grandparents had an older type house. I remember not precisely a conversation pit in the house, but at least the living room had kind of a step down into it, so it had that feeling. There was like a den downstairs where the TV was, and my grandparents had a Nintendo. So that was my first experience with like Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. I didn't get to play it much. Oftentimes my cousins would be playing it. But it's weird to think back now that my grandparents had a Nintendo. Like I don't know. That's just how it was. But their house had a concrete fish pond with fish in it, and one vivid memory I have is I remember walking around the edge of the fish pond. It was kind of in a nook, so it was surrounded by walls on three sides, but I was like walking along the edge on the interior part, and my brother just below me he had watched me do it and apparently tried to do it himself, and I wasn't around. I was like, golly, 4 maybe. But he fell in, and my grandma or one of the adults found him floating face down in the pond, and they pulled him out, and he was freaking out, and it was crazy. I remember I was like in a bedroom or something, and just hearing the commotion and coming out and seeing my brother all wet and crying, and had no idea what was going on. And funny enough, after that, I remember going to the doctor's appointments a lot with my brother. Me being the curious boy that I was, bugging my mom, why are we here? What are we doing here? Why, what does my brother need? And she told me, your brother has a fish in his ear. And I believed her, because, mom said so. As it turns out, brother did not have a fish in his ear. He was getting tubes in his ears, which most of my brothers had. I didn't. But yeah, rather than try to explain that to a child, my mom just told me that he had a fish in his ear. And the funny part is I just believed her, and then moved on. And then, years later, kind of reflecting, thinking back on old memories. And I remember being in the van with my mom, and, just, Mom? Yeah? Did my brother really have a fish in his ear? And she just laughs, and she goes, no. And, like, you lie. But it was, it's funny to think about, now that I have my kids, and when kids ask questions that have a complex answer and you just really don't want to dive into it. Sometimes we go for the fantastical, and they believe it. And it, better or worse, it can comes back to bite us on the butt for sure. But yeah, that's part of childhood, I guess. Yeah, and then part of being a parent, learning how to navigate those kinds of questions. There's always the inevitable, but how does the baby get in mommy's tummy? and that's always a trip. I'm glad it's been fairly easy with my children. Thank goodness for the good education system and being able to at least keep them informed, and the internet and all that. So it's interesting raising kids in kind of this in the Google ages, where if they have a question and I can't answer it, they have a way to find it. And so in that respect, it's important to I try to be fairly upfront and honest with my kids with most things like that, because if you go looking for answers on the internet, sometimes you can find answers that just take you to weird places. I don't want my kids coming back to like, Dad, I'm a flat earther now. Something like that. But this fellow here, I named him Hans for obvious reasons. He's a handy man. Sorry, dumb joke. But I hope everyone had a fun and safe Labor Day. I don't know what people do for Labor Day. I assume camp, barbecue, fish, that sort of stuff. Not so much my bag. I don't know. But yeah, appreciate you sticking around. Hope you have a good day. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment, what you want me to draw, any questions, any fun vacationing memories you have. One of these days I want to do a drawing request. Nobody's challenged me with anything, so hey, give me something to draw. And that's it. Bye-bye.